The city sparkled with festive lights, and the air hummed with the spirit of Christmas. Crowds of shoppers filled the streets, their laughter and chatter blending with the melodies of carolers. Every corner seemed alive with celebration. But inside Jake and Emma's home, the joy felt like a distant memory, replaced by silence, unspoken words, and the weight of growing distance. Jake, a marketing specialist, had always been a devoted husband and father. However, as Christmas approached, his priorities shifted. Consumed by the pressure to outshine his colleague Ethan in a bid for a managerial position, Jake began to distance himself from his family. Emma, a high school teacher, tried to maintain the warmth of their home for the sake of their two children, Sophie and Noah. But Jake's absence was palpable, casting a shadow over the season. As the days counted down to Christmas, Emma couldn't help but wonder if the joy and closeness they once shared as a family were slipping away for good. Jake and Emma's love story began during their senior year at university. Emma was a passionate student with dreams of becoming a teacher, while Jake was an ambitious young man determined to climb the corporate ladder. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and before they knew it, life threw them an unexpected curveball. Emma discovered she was pregnant. Determined to take responsibility, Jake proposed, and the two got married in a modest ceremony. It wasn't the grand wedding Emma had once dreamed of, but they were content, focused on building a future together. Their first child, Sophie, was born shortly after. While balancing classes, part-time jobs, and late-night feedings, the couple managed to graduate, ready to face life's challenges as a team. Years later, their family grew again with the arrival of their son Noah. They moved into a cozy house in a quiet neighborhood, complete with a backyard where the kids loved to play. Though they didn't have luxuries, their lives were rich with laughter, love, and small moments of joy. Emma always cherished the simplicity of their life. Sunday picnics in the park, movie nights at home, and family dinners were her treasures. Jake, too, had once been an active and loving presence, making sure to be there for every milestone. However, as the years passed, something shifted. Jake's career ambitions began to overshadow the moments that once mattered most, and cracks started to form in the life they had so carefully built. Late nights at the office replaced family time, and his once thoughtful gestures became rare. For Emma, the hardest part was watching the disappointment in Sophie and Noah's eyes, as their father became a distant figure in their daily lives. It started with small changes that Emma hoped were temporary. Jake began staying late at the office more often, citing urgent projects or deadlines. At first, she believed him. He was working hard for their family's future, after all. But as the months passed, the temporary became routine. Jake's competition with Ethan, his colleague, had grown into an unspoken rivalry. Both were vying for the same managerial position, and Jake became consumed by the need to outshine Ethan. He volunteered for every additional task, worked weekends, and even skipped family events. Emma noticed the toll it was taking on their family life, but Jake always brushed off her concerns. "This promotion will change everything for us," Jake explained one evening when Emma confronted him after he missed dinner with the kids for the third night in a row. "Think of the opportunities we'll be able to give Sophie and Noah." "But they don't need more opportunities, Jake. They need their dad," Emma replied softly, her frustration masked by sadness. Despite Emma's attempts to reach him, Jake continued to spiral deeper into his obsession with work. Weekends that once meant trips to the park or pancake breakfasts now involved Jake locked in his home office, immersed in spreadsheets and marketing reports. Yet, in the rare moments he allowed himself to pause, Jake felt a gnawing emptiness, a sense that he was losing something he couldn't quite name. Sophie, their 9-year-old daughter, had recently written a poem at school titled "Our Family Tree." She showed it to Emma, who smiled as she read the touching words about their bond. But one line stood out painfully. "Daddy's branch is far away, but I hope it comes back one day." Emma's heart broke as Sophie asked, "Mom, do you think Dad will help decorate the Christmas tree this year?" Emma reassured her daughter as best she could, but even she doubted Jake would make time. The day the family set up the tree, the atmosphere was somber. Decorating had always been a tradition, filled with laughter and music, with everyone pitching in to hang ornaments. This year, it was just Emma and the kids. Sophie and Noah tried to stay cheerful, but the absence of Jake loomed over the room. "Where's Dad?" Noah asked as he held a shiny red ornament. "He's working, sweetheart," Emma replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Later that night, after the children had gone to bed, Emma confronted Jake again. She knocked on the door to his office and waited. When Jake finally looked up, he seemed worn out but determined. "Emma, I'm in the middle of something important," he said, clearly impatient. "You said that last week, and the week before," Emma replied. Her voice trembled slightly. "Jake, the kids are starting to think you don't care, and honestly, I'm starting to wonder too." Jake sighed heavily. "Don't you understand? I'm doing this for us, for them." "No, Jake, you're doing this for yourself," Emma shot back, her voice breaking. "The kids don't need a dad with a bigger paycheck. They need a dad who's here, present." But their conversation was cut short as Jake's phone rang. A work call. Emma left the room, defeated, while Jake turned back to his computer. The distance between them was no longer just emotional, it was palpable. In their home, in the looks their children gave, and in the silence that lingered after every argument. Emma began to wonder if Jake even realized how much he was losing in his pursuit of success. The breaking point came one Friday evening. Jake had promised Emma they would have dinner together, a rare opportunity to reconnect after weeks of distance. Emma had been cautiously optimistic, putting on the blue dress Jake always complimented, styling her hair, and even adding a touch of her favorite perfume. She arrived at the restaurant early and waited at their reserved table. The minutes turned into an hour, but Jake was nowhere to be seen. Her calls went unanswered, and as the restaurant manager politely asked her to vacate the table for the next reservation, Emma felt her patience and hope slip away. Just as she stepped outside to hail a taxi, Jake appeared, disheveled and breathless. "Emma, I'm so sorry. There was a last-minute meeting and he began, but Emma cut him off. "You don't need to explain, Jake. I already know. It's always work," she said, her voice calm but edged with exhaustion. Jake's expression shifted, a mix of frustration and guilt. "You act like I'm doing this for fun. Don't you see? I'm trying to provide the best for us. Ethan's kids are attending private schools, and his family is moving into a bigger house. Do you think I don't want the same for ours?" Emma stared at him, incredulous. "We don't need a bigger house, Jake. We don't need private schools. What we need is you. The kids need their father at soccer games, at school presentations, and even for something as simple as decorating the Christmas tree." Jake's voice rose in frustration. "You don't understand what it takes to get ahead, Emma. Do you think success comes without sacrifice? You're never satisfied." Emma's composure cracked. "Sacrifice? Jake, you've sacrificed your family for this obsession. And for what? To compete with Ethan?" Then came the words that cut deeper than anything Jake had said before. "You almost ruined my future when you got pregnant back in college." The words hung in the air like a slap. Jake's eyes widened as he realized what he had just said, but the damage was done. Emma looked at him as though seeing a stranger. Her voice trembled as she replied, "I can't believe you just said that." Before Jake could respond, a voice interrupted. "A rose for the lady." They turned to see a man dressed in a cheap Santa costume holding a bucket of roses. Jake, still fuming, snapped, "Not now. Just leave us alone." The man smiled kindly but said nothing as he moved on. Emma, shaking her head, stepped into a waiting taxi and left without another word, leaving Jake standing alone on the sidewalk. Jake walked home that night, his thoughts swirling with regret and frustration. The streets glowed with Christmas lights, but their cheer only deepened his sense of loneliness. As he turned onto a quieter road, he heard footsteps behind him. Turning around, he saw the man in the Santa costume from earlier, still carrying his bucket of roses. "Are you following me?" Jake asked, his tone sharp. The man smiled, undeterred. "Not at all, just heading home." This is my usual route. Jake sighed, his irritation giving way to exhaustion. Look, I'm sorry for snapping at you earlier. It's been a rough night. The man nodded, his kind demeanor surprisingly calming. Rough nights tend to teach us the most, don't they? For reasons Jake couldn't explain, he found himself talking. He vented about the pressure to outdo Ethan, the endless hours at work, and how he felt trapped between ambition and his family's needs. The man listened quietly, his gaze thoughtful. When Jake finally paused, the man spoke. You remind me of myself, years ago. I was at the top of my game, a CEO of a major company. I had everything, wealth, recognition, power. But I lost the one thing that mattered most. Jake glanced at him, curious, despite himself. She was my world, the man continued, his voice tinged with sorrow. But I was too focused on climbing higher, making more, proving myself. I missed dinners, anniversaries, even her father's funeral. One day, she packed her things and left. I thought I could win her back with grand gestures, but by then it was too late. She had moved on, and I was left with my success and an empty house. Jake felt a pang of recognition. Now I live simply, the man said, adjusting his Santa hat. This costume, these roses, they're my way of reminding people of what's truly valuable. Not money, not titles, but love, connection, and family. It's ironic, isn't it? I had everything, yet I lost it all because I forgot the most important thing, to cherish what I already had. Jake stopped walking, his heart heavy. What if I've already gone too far? The man turned to him, his eyes kind but firm. It's never too late to change, Jake. But you have to choose. The path you're on, it leads to loneliness, but your family, they're still within reach. If you act now. As they arrived at Jake's house, the man handed him a small bouquet of roses. For your wife, not just an apology, but a promise to do better. Jake took the bouquet, a lump forming in his throat. Thank you. How much do I owe you? The man shook his head. You don't owe me anything. Just don't waste this chance. Jake turned to open the door, but when he looked back, the man was gone. Jake entered the house, clutching the bouquet of roses tightly. The living room was dimly lit, and Emma sat on the couch, her arms crossed and her face streaked with dried tears. She looked up as he approached, her expression guarded. Emma, Jake began, his voice trembling. I'm sorry. I'm truly, deeply sorry. Emma stood but didn't say a word, waiting for him to continue. I lost my way, Jake admitted, holding out the flowers. I let my ambition, my envy, and my need to prove myself take over. I've been so focused on what I thought we needed that I forgot what we already have. I forgot what really matters. You, Sophie, Noah. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you. Emma took the bouquet hesitantly, her expression softening but still cautious. You've said sorry before, Jake. What makes this time different? Jake swallowed hard. Because I see it now. I see how I've hurt you, the kids, all of us. Tonight I met someone, a man who's already walked the path I'm heading down. He lost everything because he couldn't see what he had until it was gone. I don't want to be him, Emma. I want to be the husband and father you deserve. Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she listened. For the first time in months, Jake's words felt genuine, not just an attempt to smooth things over. I promise you, Jake said, his voice firm despite the emotion. No more late nights, no more weekends at the office. From now on, my priority is this family. Our family. Emma stepped forward, wrapping her arms around him. I've missed you, Jake, she whispered. And I've missed all of you, he replied, holding her tightly. The next morning, Jake woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. He called Sophie and Noah into the living room and proposed something that instantly lit up their faces. How about we redecorate the Christmas tree together, from scratch? The children cheered, their excitement filling the house. Emma smiled warmly, watching as Jake climbed onto a stool to place the star at the top of the tree, the kids applauding like it was a grand achievement. That evening, the family gathered around the glowing tree, their laughter mingling with the soft twinkle of the lights. The warmth in the room felt like a new beginning. Through the window, Jake caught a fleeting glimpse of a man in a red Santa hat walking down the street. For a moment, their eyes seemed to meet, and Jake felt a wave of peace wash over him. A serene smile spread across his face as he whispered, "Thank you." Sometimes, Jake thought, the greatest gifts come not from what we gain, but from what we rediscover.